The next talk, which is the last of the invited talks this evening, but after the next talk, we will have a patients panel. And this next talk is by two colleagues of mine. So I'm particularly pleased that we've included injury prevention as a major topic for tonight's talks, and no better group to handle this issue than Parachute Canada, which is now going to enjoy its 10th anniversary celebration this year. And at Parachute Canada, there are two extremely talented people, and it's my pleasure to ask them to present for us. And these people are Pamela Fuselli, who's the president and CEO at Parachute, and her pedigree is excellent because prior to that, she was the executive director at C.E.T.S, which was one of the four organizations that came together to form Parachute Canada. And Think First, which was the organization I was involved with, was one of those four, and we all decided to put our efforts into Parachute, and that was a good decision. And the other speaker who is going to talk about injury prevention is Stephanie Cowle. And Stephanie has been in this field of injury prevention for at least 10 years. And she's currently the director of knowledge translation at Parachute, and responsible for one of the really important national efforts that went on as stimulated by Public Health Agency of Canada and the federal government. And that was to work on the concussion in sport and knowledge translation effort that culminated in a very useful document on how we should all try to manage sport concussion. So who is first, Stephanie or Pamela?
I am going to kick things off. Thank you so much, Charles, for that wonderful introduction. You are always a huge champion of Parachute and our efforts, and of course was integral in the formation of the organization. So Stephanie is going to hopefully share our screen. There we go. All right. So thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak to you about some of the efforts that Parachute is undertaking to prevent concussion. We are, as Charles said, a national charity dedicated to injury prevention, and that includes concussion, although it does include a number of other issues as well. And our goal really is for Canadians to live long lives to the fullest. And the way to do that is by preventing one of the major causes, one of the leading causes really of death and serious injury, and that's and injuries. So where do we look for this information? There is a whole spectrum where and on this slide, we are looking at just the first two levels of prevention. And this is where Parachute focuses our efforts on preventing the injury, the incident from happening to begin with. It's very hard to turn back the clock, and in some cases it's not at all possible. But concussion is a bit of a unique type of injury. The evidence shows that when you have timely access to assessment and care, that's associated with more optimal recovery. And we know there are risks when someone with a concussion continues on. So they continue to play, they continue to do what they were doing when they sustained the concussion and not seek treatment. So it's important that we also address secondary prevention by taking steps that to avoid the long-term consequences that we just heard Keith Yates talking about. So we want to in the secondary prevention side, reduce the severity of the injury. So the injury may have already occurred, but there are ways to mitigate subsequent injury to that person. When we look at the leading causes of concussion, this chart here shows you the different positions that injuries causing concussion can take, whether they're an emergency department visit or a hospitalization. We look at injury prevention from a public health approach, and we try to understand what the issue is. And we are driven by data and evidence. Who is getting hurt? How many people are getting hurt? Where are they getting hurt? Why are they getting hurt? And marrying that with the evidence of what do we know works the best to prevent an injury. So concussion, we often talk about it in sport, but it can happen anywhere in your daily life, really. Motor vehicle crashes, a fall. We see this more and more in the older adult population, falls and concussion going hand in hand. Sport, obviously, sport and recreation, violence they're common causes. But I've heard stories of people who have walked into their kitchen cabinet door and sustain a concussion. So it really can come from anywhere, and understanding how they happen is essential to targeting for prevention. So just so you know, it may look a little odd to see something listed as struck by. That means struck by is either an object or a person. It's not sports related in particular. So being hit in the head by an object or colliding with another person. And that's a ranking that is based on the data and the codes that are collected. These rankings that you see here can change by different ages. So younger children and older adults, we see falls come up as one of the leading causes or the leading causes. And whereas with youth age 10 to 19, it's the sports that are causing the concussion. And we were preceded by the expert in the Canadian Concussion Network, but it's really important for Parachute as a knowledge translation agency to have relationships with research partners. So looking at what are some of the needs of the prevention sector in research, contributing our knowledge not only in injury prevention, but also in knowledge translation. And how do we continue to focus research on the prevention end of the spectrum, as well as, care and rehabilitation and all of that. The Concussion Priority Setting Partnership, as we heard, it is currently underway, and it does include prevention in the priority setting exercises. And this is really of interest to us to hear back about what people are looking for answers to. And in some cases, the good news is we have some of those answers and we can make them more available. And in others, it's really shining a light on the areas that we really need to focus our research agenda on. So I'm going to hand it back over to Stephanie, who's going to take the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Pam. In addition to partnering with research and engaging with the evidence and the data, one of the important pieces of work Parachute does is work with partners across the country to implement programs, education, and awareness at the community level. So as one example, we have Parachute Brainwaves. This is one way that Parachute has long been involved in educating kids about preventing head injuries, including concussions. And it's a neuroscience program where trained volunteers help kids understand why their brain is amazing, all that it does, the way that it works, and why it's so important to protect it, but also ways they can start thinking about protecting it. Over the many years that we've been delivering this program, primarily through schools across the country, we have on average reached about 30,000 students every year in grades 4 to 6. And we continue to, hope to grow this program. We have digital resources available on our website. So if you're interested in finding out if there's a site near you, or even taking brainwaves activities and delivering them in your community yourself or with partners. We have lots of resources available to do that. Another example of a long-standing program, and I can probably mention that both of these really have roots with Charles and Think First as well, so long history with these programs. Our Parachute Smart Hockey program, which we recently updated and revamped to ensure it's consistent with the evidence and ways that we communicate about concussion and the culture of sport in current times. This program was designed to help keep hockey players safe and prevent brain injuries on the ice. It recognizes that safety in hockey, just like all other settings, is a shared responsibility with many people involved. And this particular program and the toolkit it provides walks teams through important concussion information, helps them integrate concussion tools and resources into their kind of annual seasons, and also supports hockey communities to prevent, recognize, and manage concussions. And an example on the screen is our on-ice tip sheet for players. There's a companion piece for coaches and how to focus on building a safer sport culture, and appropriate skill development and other considerations for injury prevention. Another important area of partnership has been our work with the amateur sports system in Canada. Charles alluded to the work that we have done in sport, and this really began with working with concussion experts, the federal government of Canada, and the sports themselves to improve and implement concussion protocols. And that work, which we call the Harmonization Project, has been underway for or began about 6 years ago now. But what that's grown into is longstanding relationships and further commitments from many of our sport organizations to do more. It's not enough to have a concussion policy or protocol in place. How are we educating families and coaches and all participants who can all support athlete and student well-being and safety? So a couple of examples we have here of sports we've recently worked with. One is the work that we have done with Special Olympics Canada, and these resources can be found on their website. We've worked with them and their stakeholders to specifically understand how better to provide support for athletes with intellectual disabilities, and what are some of the considerations when we're talking about especially concussion recognition and prevention for athletes who may communicate in different ways, who may not be verbal, who may be nonverbal, and other considerations. And we need to make sure that we are speaking with different groups and communities and making sure resources and supports are suitable for them. So we've developed resources specifically for Special Olympics athletes, including a Pan-Canadian policy and protocol, a concussion guide for athletes, and an athlete concussion education video. Another example, and I apologize, it may be a little tough to see on the screen, but we've worked with other national sports like Taekwondo Canada to take a look at various information we can provide, developing toolkits for different groups. So for parents and athletes, as well as for coaches and other safety officials, and referees and judges. And again, including in this a focus on sport-specific injury prevention for the sport with a focus on concussion. So always looking to work with the expertise of their sports. They know their sport. They know their rules, their culture, the different things that can be addressed and that may impact safety. We combine that with our knowledge of concussion, with research about prevention and concussion management, and really can build out tailored approaches that the sports can then communicate and implement, just giving them the tools to enhance their culture. We have also taken a role to enhance awareness about concussion at a broader national level. And so I'm going to play a short 30-second clip that is a PSA that we developed with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada, with an emphasis on recognition and checking for concussions.
What happened?
She fell off the jungle gym.
She was tackled.
You just hit a rock.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Are you okay?
If you have to ask, you have to check.
50% of concussions go unreported. Learn what to do at parachute.ca.
So in this case, we were able to enlist champions from Canada's Olympic and Paralympic teams as spokespeople to help emphasize the fact that it's not enough if we see an impact to just say, hey, you're fine, you're okay, but to actually to learn more about concussion, how to watch for signs and symptoms, and also be aware that it can happen in all sorts of settings. We wanted to represent various modes of physical activity and play outside of a sport setting. There we go. I wanted to leave you with our website at parachute.ca, where we have tons of free resources in both English and French related to concussion. We have resources that are tailored specifically for the public, for health professionals, for schools, for sports. Lots of information there. We also have a free app that's available for any system called Concussion Ed, with lots of information on the go, including ability to access recognition tools on the go. So with that, just wanted to wrap up by emphasizing, there are so many reasons why prevention is important, and we are thrilled to see prevention have a spotlight at the public forum tonight. We are still learning so much about the potential long-term effects of concussions, as Keith mentioned, learning about long-lasting symptoms, still learning about cumulative effects and the effects of subconcussive impacts and what that might mean. And on top of this, understanding that when we listen to the voices of people who are impacted by concussion, there's no question that prevention is the ultimate solution. Thank you very much for your time.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, Charles.
That was fantastic. Just wonderful presentations. What a potpourri of talent and dedication and innovation and creativity all wrapped up in this evening's events. And the last two speakers are just wonderful to hear. An important question for you is the issue of drug and alcohol abuse as a cause of concussion. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so when we're looking at how causes of injury, including causes of concussion, are looked at in the injury prevention field and in our health system data, what we actually see are the direct causes. So things like a fall or a motor vehicle collision. Now there is, and those are two major causes of concussion. And there's, no doubt when we look at those two causes of injury, that substance use and particularly alcohol are major contributing factors to things like falls and car crashes. So certainly there is a sort of intersection and cross-cutting of substance use in those causes of injury. Pam, I don't know if you want to add anything further to that.
No, I think you hit the nail. Yep.
And then one further question. Any prevention ideas for adults? For example, when you buy a bike, on why you have to wear a helmet and messages like that?
Yeah, so the information on our website is applicable to all ages. In terms of sport, there is some focus on children and youth, particularly because that is such a primary mechanism of injury in that age group. However, for example, one of the things that we've done recently is add a return to activity strategy on our website that's not just about return to sport, but looking at return to the workplace, return to other types of physical activity that anyone might engage in. So there's certainly information on our site for all ages, and you sort of the intersection there with cycling and other activities. We are an injury prevention organization, more broadly speaking. So if you take a look at our injury topics on our website, you will find information on safer cycling, driving, all winter and summer activities, all sorts of injury prevention information for all ages.
Well, thank you again. And we'll all look forward to everybody heeding your advice so we can all go out of business as healthcare professionals treating people with concussion. So thanks again.